we've discovered Kepler-22b, a small exoplanet in the Cygnus constellation. Seems like nothing important, right? But it's actually a big deal. This is the first planet located in the habitable zone that was found by the Kepler telescope. In other words, there may be water on this planet, and if there's water, there may be life. Kepler-22b can become our new potential home. So let's take a closer look at it. Actually, discovering new planets is not easy at all. Not all of them can be seen through our super cool telescopes, even the almighty Hubble. Sometimes, the stars are so small and dim that it's really hard to find them on a map. The same thing happened with Kepler-22. In such cases, scientists have to use a special method. First, they take a bunch of photos of the star in different periods of time. Then, they look at them and think, are there any dark dots on this star somewhere? And if they find one, that might be a planet. These photos actually help us to discover some very important stuff. Like, first of all, this planet exists. Secondly, here is its size, radius, and proximity to the star. And finally, will we be able to live there? Now we know that Kepler-22b is very similar to our planet and could potentially become a second Earth. It's also very close to us, only 635 light-years away. Yeah, it's about 3 quadrillion miles, but this is one of the closest options. Kepler-22, the star of Kepler-22b, is a yellow dwarf. It's very, very similar to our Sun. The same size, the same radius, even the age is almost the same, 4 billion years. The difference is only in luminosity. It's about 20% dimmer than the Sun. So, no matter how much you strain your eyes, you won't see this star in the night sky. The planet Kepler-22b is about 2.4 times larger than our Earth, and that's pretty good. More radius means more potential water and space to live. Although going from one city to another would take a while. It's scary to even imagine a 3-day-long plane flight. We don't know the exact mass of this planet, but scientists think it's bigger than Earth's. Actually, the mass of Kepler-22b can be up to 36 times greater than that of our planet. What does it mean? Vigorous gravity. If the planet is 36 times heavier than Earth, then gravity there will be about 6 times stronger. Can you barely lift 20 pounds of potatoes? Try 120. Not to mention that you yourself can become much heavier on that planet. You'll have to get incredibly pumped up just to walk there. You have to literally turn yourself into a bodybuilder just to get to work. The worst thing is that with such gravity, it'd be incredibly difficult for plants to survive there. They'd need at least a little freedom to rise up from the ground. And animals. Our dogs and cats would have to turn into little balls of muscle to survive there. But if this planet has its own animals or other inhabitants, we can roughly imagine what they may look like. They probably have a lot of legs to make moving easier. They aren't really tall, but they're very massive and extremely strong. Muscular giant spiders? Could be worse, I guess. The good news is that this is all unconfirmed information. If we're very lucky, and gravity there turns out to be just a bit stronger than Earth's, then, of course, it'll be much easier to live there. The next thing we know about Kepler-22b is that it's about 15% closer to its star than we are to the Sun. If Kepler-22b existed in our solar system, it would be located somewhere between Earth and Venus. Does that mean we're all going to burn? No, silly. As I mentioned before, the star Kepler-22 is pretty cold, just some 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's why we can assume that the temperatures on Kepler-22b will be about the same as we have on Earth. If the planet orbits its star the same way Earth orbits the Sun, which we don't actually know, Kepler-22b can rotate around its star on its side, like, for example, Uranus. What? Didn't you know Uranus is actually lying on its side? Also, look at its rings. Yes, Uranus also has rings, like Saturn, but they're vertical. The universe is truly a mysterious place. So, If Kepler-22b is really something like that, then the weather on the planet will be, to put it mildly, not very good. Incredibly cold winters will be regularly followed by hot summers. And, just like with tidally locked planets, we'd be able to live more or less comfortably only on the narrow piece of land between these two crazy sides. Let's hope that this is not the case and the planet rotates normally. But it's not all that bad. Studies show that there may be an ocean on Kepler-22b. You already know that water means life, but in this case, it's also a big plus because a planet covered by an ocean always has more stable temperatures. The water absorbs some of the heat and distributes it evenly across the planet. The hot parts cool down, and the icy ones warm up. By the way, that's exactly what happened to Earth billions of years ago. When our planet started getting its first little puddles, our beloved moon helped these puddles to spread all over the planet. Thanks to this, a burning horror that used to be our Earth turned into a cute little ball full of life. So, if Kepler-22b has water but no atmosphere, scientists think that the average temperature there could be around 12 degrees Fahrenheit. But if there's also an Earth-like atmosphere, then the temperature can reach 72 degrees Fahrenheit. That would be nice. And finally, 1 year there is equal to 290 Earth days, about 9 months. The planet has no natural satellites, so unfortunately, we'd have to say goodbye to a beautiful view of the moon. On the bright side, we'd probably be able to see the sun as a distant little star. We could admire it in the night sky, remembering our home, while not hiding from giant spiders. And this is all that we know at the moment. Unfortunately, it's quite difficult to explore such planets, so there's a lot of very important data that we don't know. For example, what kind of planet is this anyway? Yep, we're missing the most important information about Kepler-22b. We don't know if it's a rocky planet or not. And if not, then all the previously mentioned information means nothing. It may turn out to be a gas planet, or a planet covered with gas but with a solid core, like Neptune, or a water world covered with a giant ocean. In this case, it better be a water planet. Then at least we could build some kind of underwater city there. We could filter the water and eat fish, until we evolve into an amphibious species. Does it even count as evolution if we go back to our roots? Scientists, however, think that Kepler-22b may turn out to be a Neptune-like planet. Some astronomers have even assigned the planet to a category of mini-Neptunes. Yes, this is a real planetary category. But this hasn't been proven yet. But even if, fortunately for us, Kepler-22b turns out to be a rocky planet, we still don't know what the atmosphere is like there. Does it exist at all? What if it turns out to be something like the atmosphere of Venus, which is more toxic than your ex? Then we'd have to dig deep underground to somehow survive on this planet. And then we'd have to come up with a heat source, because it's pretty cold underground. Yeah, let's hope this won't be the case. There are many possibilities with Kepler-22b. So far, we don't have a clear answer. But let's hope that scientists will find it before we load the first people into shuttles and send them to conquer Kepler-22b. That would be awkward if it turns out to be a gas planet, or something like that.
An exoplanet is any planet inside our solar system. Some of them are free-floating. Those are called rogue planets. They move around the galactic center. Others orbit their host star, or two. For the first time, astronomers discovered exoplanets in the 1990s. Since then, scientists have found thousands of them. And now, you can sneak a peek too. Spoiler alert, some exoplanets are pretty bizarre. Others resemble our home planet and could probably support life. The closest to Earth exoplanet is Proxima Centauri b. It's a mere 4.2 light-years away from Earth. Recently, astronomers have found out that this world might resemble Earth even more than previously thought. It's only 17% more massive than our home planet. It orbits a star that is dimmer and less massive than the Sun. Proxima Centauri b is in the middle of the star's habitable zone. This means that chances are liquid water and life might exist on the planet. It looks like the exoplanet is tidally locked with its parent star. This means one of its sides faces the star at all times, and the other is always in the darkness. Scientists haven't figured out yet whether the planet has an atmosphere. It's traveling too close to its star and completes one orbit within 11 Earth days. The radiation from the star might be pulling the planet's air away. If this is the case, Proxima Centauri b isn't likely to have liquid water on its surface. Gliese 832c is 16 light-years away from Earth. In the cosmic scheme of things, it's a stone's throw away. This exoplanet is 5 times as massive as Earth and travels much closer to its parent star. That's why a year on this planet lasts a mere 36 days. But since this star is a red dwarf, much cooler and dimmer than the Sun, Gliese 832c gets as much light and heat as our planet does. At the same time, it's still unclear if Gliese 832c is similar to Earth. It probably has a much thicker atmosphere that creates a runaway greenhouse effect. This phenomenon occurs when a planet absorbs more heat from its host star than it can release back into space. This means that Gliese 832c is more likely to resemble scorching hot Venus rather than relatively cool Earth. Another Earth-like planet, TOI 700d, is 100 light-years away from us in the constellation Dorado. It orbits a small and rather cool dwarf star that is about 40% of the mass and size of the Sun. Its surface temperature is half as high as that of our star. The outermost planet, which is the very TOI 700d, is almost the size of Earth. It also sits in the habitable zone of its parent star. No flares from TOI 700 reach the planet. This increases the chances of the exoplanet being habitable. This means it can potentially develop and maintain life. Scientists don't know for sure the exact conditions on the surface of the planet, but one of the computer simulations they've created shows a planet covered with an ocean. It has a very dense atmosphere dominated by carbon dioxide. Astronomers think a similar atmosphere surrounded Mars when it was a young planet. But another 3D model shows TOI 700d as an all-land, cloudless world. That's what our Earth would probably look like if it wasn't covered with oceans. Winds on TOI 700d move away from the night side of the planet and meet in the area that directly faces the star. There is an exoplanet that stands out among the rest because of its awesome magenta color. You can find this world in the Virgo constellation. The planet is called Gliese 504b. The distance between this planet and its parent star is 9 times the distance between the Sun and Jupiter. The planet formed relatively recently and is still glowing with heat. That's why its surface looks pinkish. Just 20 light-years away from the Sun, which isn't such a great distance when we talk about space, a bizarre rogue planet is roaming our home Milky Way galaxy. But even though this planet doesn't orbit any star, it still has an incredibly powerful magnetic field. It's 4 million times stronger than Earth's magnetic field. The exoplanet also produces amazing auroras. When it was discovered in 2016, astronomers were almost sure they had detected a brown dwarf, which is an object too large to be a planet and too small to be a star. But later, scientists received proof that the space object wasn't big enough to be a brown dwarf. The planet sure is a mammoth among its peers. It's 1.2 times as wide as the largest planet of the solar system, Jupiter, and more than 12 times as heavy. Astronomers think the exceptional strong magnetic field helps the planet produce the auroras. But the most curious thing is that they're generated in a different way than auroras on Earth. It might be because the exoplanet's moon helps the planet create these light shows. If you traveled 20,000 light-years away from Earth, you'd come close to a red dwarf in the Sagittarius constellation. Such stars are very cool and small. Quite far away from this cold star, there's a planet. The distance between this world and its host star is so great that the planet receives very little heat. It's one of the coldest planets ever detected. The average surface temperature on the planet is lower than -360 degrees Fahrenheit. That's why the entire planet is covered with a thick layer of ice. If you stepped onto its surface, you'd see nothing but glaciers, plains, and mountains of ice. And still, astronomers claim life might exist deep beneath the frozen surface. All because the core of the planet is likely to generate enough heat to melt some of its inner ice. In this case, there would be an enormous subsurface ocean, maybe even swarming with bizarre life forms on the planet. One of the oldest exoplanets we know about is PCR B162026b. It's about 12.7 billion years old. It's almost 3 times as old as Earth, which appeared 4.5 billion years ago. This also means that the Genesis planet formed only about 1 billion years after the Big Bang. The planet is so old that its 2 parent stars have had enough time to evolve into a white dwarf and a pulsar, making almost 100 revolutions per second. Sunrises on this planet must look awesome. I bet the next exoplanet isn't like any other you might have seen before. It's often called Super Saturn or Saturn on steroids. That's because J1407b has a colossal system of rings. They're 640 times as large as those of Saturn. The bizarre world is 434 light-years away from Earth. It's the only planet we know about that has rings similar to Saturn's. If you moved J1407b to our solar system and replaced Saturn with it, its rings would look many times larger than a full moon. Astronomers have noticed a gap halfway through the planet's rings. The chances are high that an exomoon the size of Mars orbits the planet somewhere within this gap. If you lived on this moon, you'd have an awesome view every time you looked up into the sky. This exoplanet, called WASP-12b, munches on the light coming from its star. It's one of the darkest worlds people know about. All because its day side consumes light rather than reflects it back into space. The planet is giant, twice the size of Jupiter, and it traps more than 94% of the light that reaches its atmosphere. This is likely to be the main reason for the insane temperatures on the surface of the planet. They can rise up to 4,600 degrees Fahrenheit. It's almost half as hot as the surface of the Sun. WASP-12b travels so close to its host star that it needs just 1 day to complete one orbit. Its night side isn't as hot as the day side, a mere 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Because of this difference in temperature, water vapor and clouds gather above the surface of the planet. From time to time, swirls of material from the planet's superheated atmosphere spill onto its star. About 4,000 light-years away from Earth, there's an exoplanet that might be one enormous diamond. It's 5 times the size of our planet, but needs only 2 hours and 10 minutes to orbit its parent star. It's a pulsar rotating at a rate of 10,000 times a minute. The planet is denser than any other we've discovered so far. It consists mostly of carbon, which is so dense that astronomers think it might be crystalline. If it was true, it could mean that at least some part of the planet is diamond. On WASP-76b, it rains iron on the night side of the planet, and the temperature on the daytime side rises up to 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to vaporize most metals. This exoplanet is a bit smaller than Jupiter and located 640 light-years away from Earth. Such terrifying weather conditions in this world are caused by its unusual orbit. The distance between WASP-76b and its parent star is 10 times shorter than the distance between Mercury and the Sun. That's why the star and the huge planet are tidally locked. One side of WASP-76b always faces the star, and the other side is always pitch black. This bright blue exoplanet sits 62 years away from Earth. A bit larger than Jupiter, it looks calm and peaceful. Its blue color might remind you of our home planet. But this familiar appearance conceals the planet's horrifying nature. The beautiful hue comes from silicate atoms and particles that make up the atmosphere. But the wind speed on the planet can reach 5,400 miles per hour. That's 7 times the speed of sound. The temperature there can rise up to 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. But this isn't the worst. In this bizarre world, it rains glass, sideways. So it's probably not the place where you'd like to spend your vacation. This planet is as light as that piece of fluff stuck to your sweater. In the scientific world, it's called WASP 193b. But let's call it the Cotton Candy Planet. It's located around 1,200 light-years away from us. Sure thing we'll never see it with our own eyes, but scientists say the Cotton Candy Planet is pretty much Jupiter's bigger, bouncier cousin, 50% more massive. It has an extremely low density combined with other factors, such as high temperatures and the infrared brightness of its host star, that make it look special. May I have a close-up here, please? Thank you. See how fluffy it is? Right now, you understand that it would be impossible to stand on its surface. Anyways, it's not often that you meet something like WASP 193b at a planetary party. Such planets might be fluffy because they're getting cooked by their parent stars, puffing up like a marshmallow that's seen too much campfire action. But the thing is, if you're that close to your star and mostly made of a hydrogen-helium cocktail, you're not gonna keep your puffiness for long. It's like trying to hold on to a balloon during a hurricane. Exoplanets like this fluffy guy here are pretty rare, but there's also WASP 100-07b, and it looks squishy too. This one kicks back 200 light-years from us, and it chose the constellation of Virgo as its official residence. From some perspective, you might say that this planet is a copycat of Earth. It has helium, and its atmosphere contains sulfur dioxide. There's some resemblance for sure, but WASP 100-07b has the density of a marshmallow. It means we can snoop through its atmosphere easier than we could with a heavyweight like Jupiter. Scientists were beyond surprised when they peered through their super space goggles, the James Webb Space Telescope's MIRI-cam. They spotted clouds made of the stuff that builds beaches, silicate, or as you might know it, sand. Imagine sandcastles in the sky. Those sound clouds are way up there in the penthouse suite of WASP 100-07b's atmosphere, where the thermostat reads a breezy 932 degrees Fahrenheit. Normally, you'd need 1,832 degrees Fahrenheit to cook up this kind of cloud, so scientists are scratching their heads. How did those grainy puffs get all the way up there? Turns out, WASP 100-07b might be running its own sandy water cycle, but with scorching silicates instead of H2O. Silicate particles get whooshed up from the sizzling lower levels by some sort of cosmic elevator, and then they cool off, party together as clouds, and sprinkle down a silicate drizzle. Nobody's packing sunscreen for this kind of sandstorm, though. Now look at this Kepler planet family located in the Kepler 51 star system. This cosmic three-pack hangs around 2,400 light-years away, looking huge but having the same density as your favorite snack. And it's cotton candy yet again. Scientists have been digging into what these space treats are made of. They now believe these puffball planets are big hydrogen-helium gas balloons with a generous smearing of methane haze. It also turns out these planets might be going through a cosmic downsize. Now, let's talk about a planet called Mascara 5b. Nope, it doesn't look like one of those cosmetic tubes from your mom's drawer. Scientists say it's one of the hottest planets ever discovered. They call it an ultra-hot Jupiter, showing off its impressive size, almost twice as big as our very own Jupiter. The dayside temperature is around a scorching 4,892 degrees Fahrenheit, while the night side hits 4,172 degrees Fahrenheit. No chance for any sort of life to survive out there. Actually, it's the second hottest nightside temperature ever recorded. To put it in perspective, the temperature of molten lava sits between 1,292 degrees Fahrenheit and 2,282 degrees Fahrenheit. So, the planet is a whole lot hotter than this scorching liquid rock. Its temperatures even surpass the melting point of most metals, which is around 3,632 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists mention that the insane heat on this planet is comparable to the exhaust of a rocket engine. Back in 2005, one famous star called... Wait, is that a name or a phone number? Whatever. So, turns out this star has a hot sister, and they have very similar names. This hot sister has B at the end. Well, this place looks like something from a sci-fi movie as it rocks a mesmerizing blue marble vibe, according to NASA. Such an appearance results from an atmosphere packed with hazy clouds laced with glass. The rain on this planet is glass-filled precipitation that likes to fall sideways, thanks to fierce winds blowing at a speed of 5,400 miles per hour. And yeah, it's the hot sister for a reason. Scientists have measured the daytime temperatures in this nightmarish world. It's around 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. So when it rains on this planet, it's more like molten glass pouring down instead of your typical waterworks. You may not know it, but space is swarming with wasps. I'm talking about planets called WASP. Meet WASP 76b. This sizzling hot Jupiter-like planet is so out of this world, it rains iron at night there. The daytime side is no less of a fiery nightmare. The temperature there is about 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit. WASP 76b may be slightly smaller than Jupiter, but don't underestimate its grandeur. This fireball is located 640 light-years away from Earth. And its terrifying climate is the result of one seriously extreme orbit. You see, these gas giants are fittingly known as hot Jupiters. They like to keep it hot, so they orbit way too close to their scorching host stars. In this case, WASP 76b is nearly 10 times closer to its star than Mercury is to our Sun. That's way too close for comfort, leaving this rebellious planet tidally locked to the star. So, while one side basks in eternal light, the other is trapped in perpetual darkness. 55 Cancri E is a total gem. It's the raddest super-Earth ever spotted. Scientists initially believed it was packed with so much carbon that its insides were blinged out with diamonds, thanks to insane pressure and sizzling temperatures of 4,892 degrees Fahrenheit. But researchers put a dent in the diamond hype, showing there was actually less carbon than we had originally thought. Well, diamonds aren't actually that rare and expensive after all. They're just well marketed. The last destination for today is GJ 1214b, located 40 light-years away from Earth. This planet is like a supersized Earth, almost 3 times bigger in diameter and a whopping 7 times heavier. It orbits around its red dwarf star faster than you can finish a pizza, finishing a complete loop every 38 hours. But it's not just the planet's size or orbit that's out of this world. It's pretty hot out there, with mind-melting 450 degrees Fahrenheit. But the coolest thing is that this planet is practically drowning in water. The sizzling temperatures and crazy high pressures on GJ 1214b create some super cool materials like hot ice and superfluid water. Superfluidity is something that happens in liquid helium when it's almost as cold as it can get. On Earth, water totally missed the memo on being superfluid because it needs ridiculously low temperatures and off-the-chart pressures to pull off that trick. Still, there's not much use in superfluid water. Even if you try it, you'll just get dehydrated.
25 light-years away from Earth, in the constellation Lyra, there's a young star, Vega. The brightest and one of the most famous, this star is twice the mass of our Sun. Vega is so brilliant, you can see it even at twilight when all the other stars disappear from the sky. Despite all the star's fame, astronomers have never seen a single planet orbiting Vega, until recently. Researchers have been observing the star for a decade or so when they spotted a curious signal. It might be Vega's first world we'll know about. If it did exist, it'd be a marvelous place. The planet would likely orbit so close to its host star that one day on it would last around 2.5 Earth days. The world would be the size of Neptune, and this ice giant is 4 times wider than Earth. Or it might even be as large as Jupiter. But the most impressive thing about this potential planet would be its temperature. The place could turn out to be the second hottest world known to scientists. On its surface, it'd be as hot as 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit. For comparison, the temperature on the surface of the hottest planet in the solar system, Venus, doesn't rise above 900 degrees Fahrenheit. The only place hotter than Vega's potential companion would be Kelt 9b. The temperatures on this exoplanet don't drop below 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Anyway, the candidate world would be closer to Vega than Mercury in our solar system is to the Sun. It could result in the giant planet puffing up like a balloon, and then even metals would melt in its scorching hot atmosphere. Unfortunately, the existence of the sizzling planet has yet to be confirmed. Astronomers think that the easiest way to prove it is by trying to spot the light emitted by the unusual planet. And since we're talking about planets, are there any worlds out there that resemble Earth? Astronomers have discovered and confirmed more than 4,000 exoplanets, but it's no secret that thousands of other candidates are still waiting for their turn to be detected. Of course, not all of these planets are like our Earth, but some are. For example, Gliese 667cc. This world is only 22 light-years away from Earth. Scientists aren't sure if the planet is rocky, but they know the place is more than 4 times as massive as our planet. The star of Gliese 667cc is a red dwarf. That's why it's much cooler than our Sun. So, the exoplanet is likely to be in its star's habitable zone. But this idea hasn't been confirmed yet. The Earth-like planet might be moving too close to the star. Then it can be regularly baked by its flames. Kepler 22b is much farther away than the previous world. If you wanted to reach that planet, you'd have to travel 600 light-years. This world, which is more than twice as large as the Earth, lies in the habitable zone of its host star. But it's unclear whether it's liquid, gaseous, or rocky. Kepler 69c is almost 70% bigger than our planet. It's also very, very far away, 2,700 light-years. It'd take you 54 million years to travel the distance that great in a modern spacecraft. Researchers aren't sure what Kepler 69c consists of, but they think it's likely to lie in the habitable zone. The planet's position in its solar system is like that of Venus and ours. But since the host star is only 80% as bright as the Sun, the planet shouldn't be affected by its heat that greatly. Kepler 452b is the most Earth-like planet astronomers have discovered so far. It resides 1,400 light-years away from our planet. Its host star is very similar to our Sun, and the planet, lying in its habitable zone, is 1.5 times the size of Earth. Scientists also think that Kepler 425b is likely to be a rocky world. Are any of these or other planets besides Earth suitable for life? There are 24 potentially super-habitable planets, and one of them met not one, but 2 criteria astronomers have for such worlds. KOI 5715.01 is 5.5 billion years old and around twice the size of Earth. It orbits an orange dwarf, a bit less than 3,000 light-years away from our planet. Its surface temperature might be 4 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than that of Earth. But since the planet's atmosphere might have more heat-trapping gases, the place is likely to be super-habitable. Another potential super-habitable planet is KOI 5554.01. This world is a bit older than our planet, 6.5 billion years against our 4.5 billion. The exoplanet's size is likely to be the same as Earth's. The planet orbits its host star, a yellow dwarf, and the average temperature on its surface is 80 degrees Fahrenheit. What planets are visible from Earth? Mercury is the nearest to the Sun in our solar system, but since this planet is so close to the star, you can only see it just after sunrise, in the early morning, and at dusk. From up close, the place looks a bit like the good old moon. The planet doesn't have an atmosphere, and the temperatures on its surface are extreme, 800 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit at night. Venus is the second brightest celestial object out there after the moon. It's one of our planet's closest neighbors. Also, it's the most similar to Earth in terms of gravity, size, mass, and average density. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see Venus's surface from Earth. A thick layer of clouds is securely hiding the planet. Jupiter can be either the third or fourth brightest object in the sky. It depends on Mars, which occasionally shines brighter than the gas giant. You can see Jupiter especially well in the summer. The gas giant's most famous feature is the Great Red Spot. That's an enormous storm that has been raging on the planet's surface for centuries. Even though the largest planet in the solar system looks like a solid sphere, you wouldn't be able to land on its surface. Jupiter is mainly made up of gases, mostly helium and hydrogen. Saturn is the second largest planet in the solar system. It's the last one of the 5 planets you can see from Earth with the unaided eye. Saturn is incredibly far from Earth, but its unique rings help you instantly recognize this colossal planet. It's a pity that Saturn's trademark feature is only visible in a telescope. By the way, more than 700 Earths would fit into Saturn. At the same time, the gas giant's density is a mere 1/8 of Earth's. This is why Saturn's mass is just 95 times greater than that of our planet. What planets in the solar system are closer to each other than the rest? Astronomers believe that Mercury is the closest to any other planet in the solar system. And that's quite shocking because, how about Venus? It orbits the Sun between Mercury and Earth. Isn't it supposed to be closer to our planet? Venus is indeed rather close to Earth, but only for a very short period in its orbit. The rest of the time, Venus is much farther away. But Mercury's orbit doesn't let the planet move too far away from the Sun, and it's closer to Earth more than 50% of the time. The same principle works with other planets too. Even gas giant Neptune is farther from Uranus than from Mercury. Most of the time, the 2 larger planets are on the opposite sides of the solar system. Their orbits sometimes do bring them very close to each other, but it happens very rarely. And how about planets outside the solar system? Astronomers have recently discovered 2 worlds traveling around the same star. Their orbits are often so close to each other that each planet looks like a huge full moon from the surface of the other. It occurs every 97 Earth days. These planets are about 1,200 light-years away from Earth. Their composition and size are different, but the distance between them is a mere 1.2 million miles. That's 5 times the distance between Earth and the Moon, and it's closer than any other planets astronomers know about. One of the newly found worlds is more than 4 times as massive as our Earth. It's likely to be rocky. The other is a gaseous planet the size of Neptune and almost 8 times as massive as our planet. Scientists haven't figured out yet how such dramatically different space bodies ended up in such similar orbits.
The Hubble telescope orbits our planet, looking out at the big unknown universe. Since it's out of our atmosphere, the Hubble can see way further than telescopes on land. No clouds up there. This guy helped us confirm the theory about supermassive black holes in the center of galaxies. It also discovered a whole bunch of new galaxies, including the world's oldest one, which is about 8 billion years older than our own. But let's travel 25 light-years away to another special star, Fomalhaut. It's one of the brightest stars in the night sky, and it's in the constellation Southern Fish. It's almost twice as big and heavy as the Sun. If you look at it from far away, you can see a bright yellow disk around it. It's a debris disk full of bits of space rock, and it's huge. Its width is about 25 times the distance from the Earth to the Sun. Scientists were curious about it. Was all this space dust going to get smushed together and become a planet one day? But then they saw something else. Right there, through all that debris, was a massive, mysterious object. A large yellow dot orbiting the star. It looked like it was skating around a cosmic ice rink. So, in 2008, scientists announced they had discovered an exoplanet called Fomalhaut b. It was the first planet outside of our solar system that we could actually see with our own eyes. It's hard to know how heavy it is, probably like a couple of Marses put together, and it lives pretty far from its host star, about 4 times the distance from the Sun to Neptune. 1 year on the planet would be the same as 1,700 Earth years. We'd all be babies over there. So, one question. Does the planet even really exist? Scientists sat around arguing about it. Then, in 2012, the trusty Hubble telescope came up with some new data. It was real all along. If it was a gas giant like Jupiter or Saturn, that would make it incredibly young, 10 times younger than Earth. And all that dust around it seems to shine non-stop. You'd have to wear sunglasses 24/7. But now, it's disappeared again. Nothing but a donut of debris. So, maybe it was destroyed by a giant asteroid, like the one that wiped the dinosaurs off the face of the Earth. Or it may have been crushed by a rogue planet. These are planets that fly around the galaxy without a clear orbit. Maybe the dust is all that's left from a head-on collision. Or maybe something went crazy in the planet's core, and it exploded from within. Scientists now believe that Fomalhaut b was never actually a planet in the first place. It was just the leftovers of two big rocks smashing together. From far away, that kind of massive collision would actually just look like a yellow dot. These two colliding space rocks must have been at least 125 miles wide. That's like DC to Philadelphia wide. But this isn't the first time a planet's just up and disappeared from view. Scientists thought they'd found an Earth-sized planet orbiting our neighbor, Alpha Centauri. They called it Alpha Centauri BB, not exactly flashy. Plus, in the end, it turned out it didn't exist. Oops. Scientists make mistakes, just like the rest of us. Not long ago, they thought there might be life on Venus. They found traces of a special gas, phosphine, which can be a sign of life. It was the top story for a month. But then, someone decided to double-check the data. There was some phosphine floating around, but not nearly as much as they thought. Travel back in time a couple of hundred years, and you can find even sillier mistakes. Back then, people believed that the sun revolved around the Earth, and that our planet was the center of the whole universe. That's because they didn't have fancy equipment to measure stuff. People saw the sun rise in the east and set in the west. That was enough to say that the sun revolved around us. So, what happened to that planet? Basically, the Hubble took a photo of the whole star system, but since it's so far away, the photo came out kind of blurry. Scientists just saw a large yellow dot and assumed it was a planet. Scientists don't usually get photos of far-off planets. They normally have to use math to find them. Space objects are in a constant dance with one another. The dance gives off a lot of energy, like gravitational energy and light energy. It's like this. Say your friend is hiding behind a corner. You can't see him, but you can see his shadow on the floor. It's kind of like what scientists do when they look out into the stars searching for planets. So, big deal, a planet vanished billions of miles from here. But what if our perfectly balanced solar system were to lose one of its planets? You better believe it would affect our lives. Mercury's up first. Good news, it's too small to have a gravitational effect on our planet, so we wouldn't even notice if it went missing. Next in line is Venus. This hot planet is sometimes called Earth's twin sister. It's completely uninhabited, of course. Other than that, Venus is one of the brightest spots in our night sky. Pull it out of the solar system and whoa, it's much darker at night. But still, not exactly a big deal. Mars. Life without Mars might even be good for the Earth. There's an asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Mars's gravity can grab an asteroid from the belt, spin it around, and catapult it toward us. Without Mars, the asteroids would stay in place thanks to Jupiter's gravity. Jupiter's heavier than all the planets in our solar system combined. It holds back the asteroid belt, and its gravity is actually strong enough to affect the Earth. A couple of thousand years after it disappears, we'd notice big changes. We'd move closer to the Sun, which means a couple of things. 1, we'd have much hotter weather all year round, and 2, our days, weeks, and years would be shorter. Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are all too far away for us to notice if they go missing. That just leaves one. No, not Pluto. What if the Moon disappeared? Basically, chaos. The Earth would tilt even more than it already does, and the weather worldwide would go crazy, even crazier than now. It might even lead to a new ice age. The Earth would start spinning a lot faster, so instead of 24 hours in a day, we might have anywhere between 6 to 12. And even though nights would be a whole lot shorter, they'd also be darker than ever. When we see the moon, we're actually seeing the sun reflecting its light off the moon, and even a new moon is usually the brightest object in the night sky. If the sun were to disappear from our sky, it would be pretty much game over. This star is the center of our whole solar system. Without it, the orbits of all the planets would collapse, and we'd move around in complete chaos. The Earth, the Moon, and all the other neighboring planets would just shoot out into the universe, heading for, well, we just don't know. Daytime would be a thing of the past. We'd need the sun for that. So it would be nighttime forever. We'd probably never see the moon again. We'd probably never see anything again. The Earth would get colder and colder, and all the water on the planet would gradually freeze. But what if the sun turned into a black hole? We might still orbit around it. Hopefully, we're far enough away from it to stay safe. Mercury and Venus might be swallowed up, but we might get lucky. So we'd stay where we are, but we wouldn't have the sun to warm us. If it happened slowly enough, we might be able to adapt. We'd need a new power source, a new light source, and plants would have to adapt to get their energy from somewhere else. We'd probably need to build a huge tent-like thing over every city, forest, ocean, or we might just jump ship and move to another planet. A new super-Earth has been spotted by astronomers, and it's quite intriguing. This planet, called TOI 715b, is about 1.5 the size of Earth, which is why it's called the super-Earth. It's also relatively close to us in space terms, only 137 light-years away. For comparison, most exoplanets are hundreds of light-years away, and all the interesting stuff, like black holes and nebulas, are usually more than thousands of light-years away from us. So, could it be habitable? The habitable zone is an estimate of where a planet might have the right conditions for liquid water. This is what we call some distance from the star, where the temperatures on the planet should be okay-ish, and water should stay liquid on its surface. It's not super precise, because it depends on a bunch of factors like the type of star, how reflective the planet is, its size, and so on. Also, just being in this zone isn't enough for water to actually be there. The planet also needs the right kind of atmosphere and a few other things. So, we invented a stricter definition in 2014, the conservative habitable zone. It's a more precise term defining the best candidates that have liquid water. Otherwise, we get too many potentially habitable planets that are not actually habitable at all. The CHZ is based on how much energy a planet gets from its star compared to Earth. If a rocky planet gets between 40 to 85%, it's considered to be in the CHZ, no matter how far away it is from its star. These planets have a higher chance of being habitable. And yes, TOI 715b is located there. This super-Earth orbits the M-type star, also called red dwarf. It's a star that's much smaller and cooler than our Sun, about a quarter of the Sun's size and mass. But if the planet is located in the habitable zone, it's actually a better option for life. Red dwarfs live much longer than our Sun, a yellow dwarf. This also means that they have more time to form little creatures on their planets. And this red dwarf really is older than our star. Our Sun is 4.6 billion years old, and this star is 6.6 billion years old, give or take a few hundred million. It doesn't have much magnetic activity, so it's not dangerous. It doesn't flare up like younger red dwarfs. These flares can be super strong and might even hurt planets by taking away their atmospheres. Although some planets around it do have thinner atmospheres, it seems like this red dwarf has already gone all out. These red dwarfs are where we're looking for planets that could support life right now. Our super-Earth is really close to its star, zooming around it in just 19 days. Since the star is small and the planet is so close, the planet passing in front of its star happens a lot and looks really clear. This makes it easy for telescopes like the James Webb to study its atmosphere without needing too much time. Now, speaking of the James Webb Space Telescope, it's bringing us into a new era of understanding distant planets beyond our solar system. Imagine being able to see what gases make up the air on a planet millions of light years away. James Webb will help us to find worlds that could support life. Right now, it's trying to figure out whether TOI 715b has an atmosphere. If it does, its atmosphere might be easier to spot compared to a planet that's drier and denser. And then we might get even more height because it would look like a good place for life. On top of all that, there might be another planet in this system, also in the habitable zone. We're not sure whether it's really there, it's just a candidate with a crazy name. But if it turns out to be real, it would be about the size of Earth. Also, it would be the smallest planet in the habitable zone ever spotted by the TESS telescope. Now, another cool thing about TOI 715b is that it cannot just have water on it, but be an entire water world. An ocean planet is a type of planet that has an ocean covering its surface or has subsurface oceans. They might not have much dry land because the water can cover everything. Sometimes the entire planet can be covered in other liquids, like lava or ammonia. When it comes to planets outside our solar system, we can't see surface water directly with our current technology. Instead, scientists look for water vapor in the atmosphere as a hint there might be liquid water below. And of course, we wonder if these planets can have life, hopefully not in the form of Leviathan-like monsters. Our models show that planets with oceans might be pretty common in our galaxy. This means there could be lots of ocean worlds out there waiting to be discovered. But the most important part about TOI 715b is that it's in the so-called small planet radius gap. If we give the planets a lineup, there will be those that are bigger and smaller than Earth. But there's a sudden gap in planets that are about from 1.5 to 2 times bigger than ours. Where are they? This gap is interesting to scientists because it tells us something about how planets form and change over time. It's not that planets don't form in this size range. They actually start off larger and then lose some of their mass, like a balloon gradually deflating. Perhaps it happens because of how they orbit their stars, with stars blowing away some of their mass as they dance around it, as our Sun does with gas from comet tails. This gap holds a lot of mystery, and planets, like our new super-Earth, are clues that could help us unravel it. We aren't sure whether it exists around red dwarfs. Maybe it's a gap in how dense these planets are, rather than in their actual size. So studying our discovered planet is even more interesting. It'll help us learn more about distant stars and their planets. Now, I mentioned TESS a while back. NASA's TESS, Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, has been in space for 6 years now and has been incredibly successful. NASA launched TESS because we already found over 5,000 planets orbiting other stars, mainly thanks to the Kepler telescope. But Kepler mostly found large planets, not necessarily like Earth. We decided to focus TESS on finding smaller Earth-like planets around nearby bright stars, making them easier to study with future telescopes. Here's how it works. The camera observes stars and looks for changes in their brightness. If the brightness suddenly drops for a while and then gets back, it could mean there is a planet passing in front of it. But stars can dim for other reasons too. For example, flaring up or having dark spots on their surface, which is why we need to be careful with this data. TESS shows us the size and orbit of these planets. Then ground telescopes help determine their mass. With these 3 parameters, we can figure out what the planets are made of and if they're rocky like Earth or gassy like Jupiter. Yeah, you want to avoid Jupiter after taco night. One example of TESS's discoveries was the TOI 700 system. There, it discovered its first ever Earth-like planet, TOI 700d. This exoplanet also orbited a red dwarf, and it's even closer to us, about 100 light-years away. Unfortunately, it's unlikely to be habitable because the temperatures there are crazy. Another big discovery was made in the AU microscopy system. TESS discovered a planet about 4 times the size of Earth and another nearly 3 times Earth's size. This system has become a key area for studying how stars and planets form and change over time. TESS has also spotted a variety of other exciting finds, including supernova, hot worlds, and so on. And as it enters its 6th year, we can only expect more exciting findings to come. This planet, yeah, the one right here, shouldn't exist, but it does. A newly discovered planet rotates around a star that's much smaller and dimmer than our Sun. The planet, however, is enormous. Such a tiny star couldn't create it, so it's like finding an ostrich egg in a chicken coop. A team at Penn State built a special tool called the Habitable Zone Planet Finder. It's an instrument that's supposed to find planets around dim, cool stars. It's connected to a big telescope in Texas. The tool looks at the light from these stars, which is mostly in the near-infrared, beyond what our eyes can see. This gadget can spot changes in a star's speed caused by a planet. If the star movement slightly changes, that means there must be a gravitational pull nearby. Years ago, this technique helped find the first known exoplanet around a star like our Sun. Today, we've improved this method to make more precise measurements. Our main goal is to find Earth-like planets. They should be rocky and located in habitable zones, areas around stars where liquid water could exist. The Doppler technique isn't that great at finding Earth-like worlds yet, but works well for cool, dim stars. And that's how we discovered the impossible LHS 3154b. Planets usually form in disks made of gas and dust in space. Picture a flat, spinning cloud of tiny particles. These particles come together and stick to each other, creating a flat, rotating disk. Over time, these tiny bits combine to form a solid core. This is the starting point for a planet. Once the core is there, it attracts more dust and even gas like hydrogen and helium. But making a planet this way isn't easy. They need a lot of stuff, mass, and materials. This process is called core accretion. Stars are a huge help in that process. Usually, big stars have more gravity, so they can gather more stuff to form planets. But the star we discovered recently isn't very big. It's 9 times smaller than our Sun. A star this small shouldn't have a big enough disk to make a heavy planet. To do that, its disk should have been at least 10 times bigger. But this heavy planet, LHS 3154b, exists. Now, this mysterious planet is 13 times heavier than our Earth. It's similar in size to Neptune. It's about 50 light-years away from us in the Hercules constellation, which, in space terms, is very close. The planet is also super close to its star, completing 1 year in almost 4 days. This discovery is making scientists rethink their ideas about how planets and stars come into existence. There are new theories coming around. For example, a theory called gravitational instability. It says that, instead of the pieces coming together bit by bit, the material in the disk collapses all at once, directly creating a planet. But even with this theory, it's hard to explain how such a heavy planet could form without a really massive disk. It'll take us some time to figure out the truth. This isn't the first planet that makes us doubt our theories. Recently, scientists found another planet called Hala. This planet is orbiting a star called Baekdu, and just like the previous one, it shouldn't really exist. It's way too close to its star. Stars change a lot during their lives. Normally, when a star becomes big and prepares to leave this world, it's called the red giant stage. A star like that tends to destroy or push away any nearby planets, creating a huge mess. Hala rotates around a red giant, and it should have been swallowed or destroyed by the expanding star a long time ago. But it's still hanging there. Even though Baekdu has already started burning helium and shrunk to a smaller size than expected, Hala isn't bothered in the slightest. Scientists call Hala the Forbidden Planet. This discovery challenges what we thought about how planets survive near aging stars. It raises 2 theories. One suggests that Baekdu was once 2 stars, a white dwarf and a red giant. Hala orbited them both, and they merged before the red giant fully expanded. This allowed Hala to survive because the extra helium from the white dwarf prevented the red giant from growing too much. The second theory says that Hala formed from the debris created when the 2 stars merged. In this scenario, Hala would be a very young planet orbiting an elderly star. Astronomers plan to continue studying Hala and look for more planets like that. Another oddball, besides me, is called LTT 9779b. This one scares us too because it's too shiny. The planet reflects 80% of the light from its star. Regular mirrors reflect from 85 to almost 100% of light, which means that this mysterious planet should look like a rough mirror, with aluminum or silver-like reflections. This is another Neptune-sized planet. It's located 268 light-years from us and was discovered by NASA's TESS spacecraft. It completes a full rotation around its star in just 19 hours. It's so close to its star that it's scorching hot, reaching temperatures over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Normally, planets this close lose their atmosphere and turn into bare rocks. But this one breaks the rules again. Now this time, we know the secret of its survival. It's because of the planet's shiny metallic clouds, which are made of glass and titanium salt. These clouds rain titanium onto its hot surface. They also reflect a lot of the light, preventing the planet from getting too hot and losing its atmosphere. It's like having a mirror shield. This planet's size also surprised scientists. It's way bigger than Earth. Other planets this close to their stars are either much bigger gas giants or small rocky planets. This planet is a smaller gas giant, and scientists didn't expect it to exist so close to its star. This is the shiniest planet ever found, even shinier than Venus. But despite its cool appearance, it's probably not a friendly place for life because of its extreme temperatures and strange metallic rain. And our final rule breaker is a planet called WASP 107b. Scientists discovered it using the James Webb Space Telescope. It's located around 208 light-years from us in the Virgo constellation. It's also fast and completes an orbit around its star in just 6 days. This is a super-Neptune exoplanet. It's similar to Jupiter in some ways, including the same size and scorching hot temperatures. But the main difference is that it's much lighter, weaker, and less dense. This is the least dense planet we've discovered so far. After researching some more, we also found that it has a tail. The helium on the planet extends beyond the transit egress. The planet is slowly losing its atmosphere due to extreme ultraviolet radiation from the star. This creates a comet-like tail. So, it looks like a fluffy comet. But that was just the beginning. The planet's low density, or fluffiness, allowed astronomers to study its atmosphere in detail. They found some surprising things, like water vapor and clouds made of fine silicate particles, which are like really fine-grained sand. The planet's host star doesn't emit a lot of high-energy light. But since WASP 107b is so loose, the light can penetrate deep into its atmosphere. This creates sulfur dioxide that smell when you light a match. In other words, it's a fluffy planet that rains sand and smells like matches. The researchers think the sand clouds in the atmosphere form in a similar way to clouds on Earth. They just have droplets of sand instead of water. These sand droplets condense, fall, turn into silicate vapor in hot layers within the planet, and then rise again to form clouds once more. And, once again, this planet couldn't have formed in its current spot. Astronomers say that it likely moved closer to its star from a birth orbit because it was attracted by some heavier neighbor. It also follows a retrograde orbit, meaning it orbits in the opposite direction to its star's rotation. All these discoveries are changing how we understand planets and their atmospheres, giving us new insights into the mysteries of our own solar system. The hunt for interesting exoplanets and life forms somewhere out there in the vast expanse of the universe keeps going. No stopping here. We're basically searching for a second Earth, a planet that's similar to our home, and where we could finally find some space friends. Hey, we're not picky. Any form of life is fine, even some bacteria-sized organisms. And this search has mostly been going on in the habitable zone around other stars. We call this the Goldilocks zone. That's a region where conditions are barely just right for liquid water to exist, whether we're talking about the surface of a planet or a moon. The hotter the star, the more space we get to explore, because its habitable zone spreads far away. And in terms of endless space that we yet know so little about, that's a lot of work. That's why we're fans of red dwarfs. There are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy, and probably around 80% of them are red dwarfs. These tiny stars are much cooler than our Sun. It means that their habitable zones are much smaller and closer to the star, so we know better where to look for planets. They're circling around their central star, and at some point, bingo, there it is. They pass in front of it and block out some of its light. The Kepler Space Telescope has already helped us find thousands of planets using this method, and most of them are orbiting around red dwarfs. Some of these planets are similar in size to Earth, and many of them could have nearly 25 times more water than our entire planet. Let's move to these planets scientists discovered, though. I want to show you something special. So, you've heard of super-Earths, right? More massive than Earth, lighter than Neptune, can be made of rock, gas, or a mix of both. Some of them have thick atmospheres, while others have thin or no atmospheres at all. You may also have stumbled upon mini Neptunes by now, too. They're almost as big as Neptune, and unlike normal gas giants, they have solid cores. That way, they can support a dense atmosphere with water and some other chemicals necessary for life. There's also hot Jupiters. Those are pretty cool, but only if they're far away from us. You know that one annoying and unpredictable neighbor you can never get rid of or figure out what they're going to do? Yeah, that would be a hot Jupiter, with strong gravity that can destabilize the orbits of smaller planets or other space bodies in the system. If we had such a neighbor, there would be more comets and asteroids hitting our surface. Luckily, our Jupiter's a good and peaceful neighbor that minds his own business, at least for now. But let's leave all these and many other planets out there alone now. Imagine traveling around in your spaceship and coming across a giant eyeball just floating there in the darkness of space and staring at the central star of that solar system. It's not a monster. Hopefully, space friends we'll make in the future won't look that big and scary, so it won't blink or turn towards you as you come closer. It's actually a planet. A little bit bizarre, but still very cool. And yup, you guessed it right, we call such eyeball planets. Now, eyeball planets are surprisingly common. Plus, some normal planets can potentially turn into them too. Eyeball planets form when matter and dust accumulates around a star and gradually turns into a solid object. It starts spinning, and over time, the gravity of the star pulls on the planet and slows its rotation until it becomes tidally locked. That means one hemisphere always faces the star, while the other is in darkness all the time. Now, we have a good example of this phenomenon near us, too. Our moon makes a circle around Earth once a month. It takes the same amount of time to turn a single time on its axis. That way, we actually always see the same face of the moon. Who knows, maybe the other side is even prettier, if you like craters and stuff. So, one of the most interesting things about eyeball planets is their appearance. If they had water on their surface, the side facing the star would have clear, bright blue oceans, the ones we'd want to visit if we ever got a chance to go on an interstellar vacation. And the other side would be more for adventurers who like harsh and challenging surroundings. Since it's in constant darkness, it would most likely be very cold and covered in ice. We've discovered so many planets outside of our solar system in the last 30 years. Super-Earths are, of course, especially interesting. It seems that many of them are not that pleasant, since they're pretty hazy and cloudy. It means it's harder to spot any life there. But some scientists still think they're promising spots when it comes to finding life beyond our solar system. Eyeball super-Earths would be a good start. These planets are probably covered in large oceans. On the cold half, where the eternal night reigns, you'd experience Arctic conditions. I feel cold just looking at this. But the day side is my jam. Plus, it sounds promising when it comes to finding life. With all that sunlight, oceans, and stuff. One of the good examples where scientists are looking for life is an eyeball super-Earth that lies in a habitable zone of the closest star to our solar system, called Proxima b. Its day side could even have conditions and an atmosphere to support some form of life. There could be a large deep ocean covering its surface. It could be really salty, but some forms of life could still survive there. Check out the Dead Sea on Earth. It's extremely salty, but some bacteria have still evolved to live there. And they're probably doing well, having their own world and all that. I mean, it's not crowded because there are no animals there. Fish that accidentally end up in the Dead Sea won't survive there for long. So, similarly, it's possible that bacteria or some other forms of life could exist in this potentially very salty ocean on Proxima b as well. But the open ocean on Proxima b could be tricky. On the dark side of the planet, the ocean could freeze, and sea ice could drift into warmer waters. That way, the ocean would cool, and more of it would freeze, even on the sunny side. The only way to prevent this global freeze-over would be an atmosphere with a lot of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. This kind of atmosphere would trap the heat from the planet's surface and wouldn't allow it to escape into space, like what happens with Venus, the hottest planet in our solar system. Without an atmosphere with greenhouse gases, the surface of Proxima b would be much colder, so it's possible that the planet would completely freeze over. The opposite scenario could also be possible. Warmer waters could serve as a transporter of heat from warm to cold regions. We don't know much about the conditions on the planet yet, so Proxima b could range from a frozen wasteland to a hot, hazy world, depending on many factors. So yeah, an eyeball planet within the habitable zone sounds promising, but its surface can still wildly range from a frozen desert to an endless ocean. Some experts believe that drifting sea ice might cool many exoplanets out there, and they can't turn into eyeball worlds. Instead, many just become sad, dark snowballs, completely covered in ice. A cool spot to spend your interstellar winter holidays, but not a place where you'd hope to find life, unfortunately. Some studies show that even Earth may have gone through some snowball stages many times in history. One of those happened around 2.2 billion years ago. I wasn't around. While the other one hit the planet 630 million years ago. During these phases, all of our beautiful oceans were covered with snow and sea ice. Perhaps even the continents were just thick ice sheets, at least on the surface. Alright, enough with the freezy icy stuff. I need some hot chocolate. Perhaps we've all stopped to think at one point about what it would be like to live on another planet. I know I've had days like that. Gotta get away. And maybe even interact with other types of creatures that already live somewhere else in space. These days, such ideas sound more like something from a science fiction book. But in the future, permanently changing your address to another planet might turn out to be mandatory. Think of the stars in our solar system as a battery. Billions of years from now, its energy will be gone. Without its light and warmth, life on Earth can't exist. When you think about it this way, we have to hope that future humans will have found some other place to live by then. Thankfully, there's good news. Recently, scientists at NASA have announced that they have found a new planet that might be able to support life. They call it TOI 700e. It's roughly the same size as Earth, and it's located in a region of space where scientists think water could exist in its liquid form, which is crucial for the development of life. This planet is not the only one, though. Close to it, there's another promising planet which they call TOI 700d, but this one is further away from its star. Because of the distance from the main source of light, Planet D lies in a special area called the conservative habitable zone. In simple terms, scientists aren't sure whether life might exist on this one, but they don't exclude such a possibility. Planet E is in the optimistic zone, which means that it's possible that it has water and even an atmosphere. Hey, at least we have some options. The two planets are in a solar system that's only 100 light-years away from Earth, which is considered pretty close in space terms. NASA found these planets by watching the light from the star and measuring how it moves when a planet passes in front of the star. This is the first time that NASA has found a solar system with multiple planets that could have life. So far, scientists have found over 5,000 exoplanets, and they think there could be at least 10,000 more. Specialists at NASA are looking into the ways to figure out if any of these planets could harbor life. But they also say we might find forms of life we don't expect to see, and that we should be open to other possibilities. That's because we only know about what life can be by looking at our own planet. Sure, everything sounds enticing so far, but don't pack your bags just yet. As appealing as these new planets might sound, there's still one problem: getting there. Scientists have been researching for decades how people can stay in space and thrive for long periods of time. And history tells us it's no easy project. Back in 1962, John Glenn became the first American to orbit our planet. To circle Earth a mere 3 times, he had to go through months of technical and physical preparations. These days, advanced technologies help us investigate Mars better, and scientists have figured out that there is water and materials on the red planet that may be useful to people. It has sparked the idea of sending people to Mars to live there, just to begin with. The first manned Mars mission is scheduled for the late 2030s or early 2040s, if everything goes well. The plan is for this to be a round trip, but even if NASA manages to plan everything well, the round-trip journey will still take about 500 days. It all depends on Mars and Earth's positions in their orbits around the Sun. One of the biggest problems with living on Mars is gravity. For starters, the astronauts will arrive at the red planet after months of living in microgravity. It means it could take them a lot of time to physically get in shape before they could start exploring. That's because living in microgravity conditions heavily affects the human body. It might mean loss of bone and muscle mass, as well as a shift in the normal movement of body fluids, which tend to go upward. This can lead to pressure on the eyes and even problems with people's eyesight. But Mars is right here, in our own solar system. What about planets that are light years away? The answer is still up for debate. It may sound cool to travel really fast, like at the speed of light. So far, scientists believe it's not possible. Sure, we may have been able to create airplanes that travel faster than sound, supersonic aircraft, but it's not the same. There's quite a difference, actually. Light is about 1 million times faster than sound. Traveling at the speed of light would mean we could go from Earth to the Moon in 1 second, or from Los Angeles to New York in less than the blink of an eye. But what stops us, though? Some say it's energy. It may be possible to make something go really fast, but it'll take a whole lot of energy. In this case, engineers will need to find new ways to make things move in space. Right now, rockets use fuel that is similar to the gasoline you use in your car. But that's not very efficient when it comes to space travel. Other ways to push a spacecraft include using electric or magnetic forces. One promising idea is using a solar sail, which is like a large thin sheet of plastic that can be pushed through space by sunlight. Some spacecraft have already used solar sails, and scientists think they could go up to about 10% of the speed of light. If other planets in our solar system turn out to be inhospitable, and we can't invent spaceships that move fast enough, we might still have a choice. Secret Option C. It was first proposed by a scientist who wrote an interesting study about a special type of planet. It suggests that we might not need spaceships to move around and escape problems on our own planet. We could use planets that are not orbiting a star. They're called rogue planets. Instead of gravitating toward a star, these lonesome space objects simply drift alone through space, doing their own thing. Think about it this way. Moving to Mars is like moving to an already furnished house. Regardless of how nice it would be, you would still have to adapt to it. You'd have to get used to how much light gets in through the windows every day, and to climbing up and down the stairs to get to the living room. Moving to a rogue planet means we'd start from scratch, building our own house from the ground up, perfectly adapted to our needs. Free-floating planets are usually seen as cold, dark, and not suitable for life. But if they have underground resources, they can be useful. They offer a constant surface gravity, a lot of space, and resources. They can also provide water and protection from space radiation. If we become an advanced enough civilization, we might be able to control the planet and even create new types of energy. So the next question would be where we could find such a rogue planet. It's hard to know how many of these there are in the universe, but scientists have found a bunch of them in one region of the Milky Way galaxy. Some rogue planets have been kicked out of their own solar systems because they were bad. No, not really. It was because of gravity, while others might have formed on their own. Either way, we don't want rogue planets to get too close either, at least not in the near future. The chances of a rogue planet entering our solar system are extremely low. But if it did, it could mess things up for us. Depending on its size, a rogue space object might divert other planets off of their course around the Sun, which could alter their exposure to light and warmth. And if it crashes into the Earth, well then, that would be a bad thing too.